In the dust and chaos of a North African refugee camp, a brilliant, deeply compassionate combat surgeon named Marc makes the ultimate sacrifice. When violent militants overrun his makeshift operating theater, his colleague and best friend, Trace Packer, a charming, reckless, and brilliant cardiothoracic surgeon with a playboy demeanor, flees to safety. Marc, however, stays behind to finish saving a young boy's life. He is brutally murdered. 1 year later, Marc's widow, Maggie McCabe, is a shadow of her former self. Once a highly skilled and revered reconstructive combat surgeon, Maggie now carries the heavy burden of unimaginable grief and a disgraced reputation, having lost her medical license after a pill-induced mistake in the operating room. Though she appears physically toned and fit, she is emotionally shattered. While attending a memorial event for her late mother at Johns Hopkins, Maggie endures the cold stares of her former peers, including a slick, overly tanned cosmetic surgeon known as Sleazy Steve Shipner. Her only lifeline comes from her former mentor, Dr. Evan Barlow, a handsome, wealthy septuagenarian cosmetic surgeon dressed in a bespoke suit. Barlow pulls Maggie aside and offers her a highly secretive, off-the-books job in New York City. Desperate for a purpose and drowning in debt, Maggie travels north. Before her meeting, she visits her father-in-law, Porkchop, a salt-and-pepper-bearded, leather-clad biker with a zen-like patience and a fierce, protective loyalty to his family. She also stops by Trace Packer's empty apartment. Trace vanished to Bangladesh shortly after Marc's death, but Maggie discovers a peculiar bill for a set of secure safe deposit boxes. Putting the mystery aside, she attends her meeting at Barlow's elite clinic. There, she is introduced to Ivan Brovsky, a broad, bald man with a bullet-shaped head, no neck, and an ill-fitting suit that barely hides his cold, calculating Russian demeanor. Brovsky represents an anonymous billionaire who needs completely discreet cosmetic surgery. Because Maggie has lost her license, she is the perfect ghost surgeon. For wiping out her massive debts and a $10 million payout, Maggie agrees to fly to a remote location immediately. Maggie is whisked via private jet and helicopter to a snowy, isolated mega-palace in a Russian forest. There, she meets her eccentric host, Oleg Ragorovich, an oily, protruding-bellied Russian oligarch with slicked-back hair and a taste for gaudy silk shirts. Oleg claims to possess the real stolen Mona Lisa and lives a life of unparalleled excess. Maggie also meets her second patient, Nadia Strauss, a gorgeous, lithe 24-year-old with striking blue aqua eyes and raven-black hair. Oleg demands that Maggie perform facial reconstruction on him, including a groundbreaking 3D-printed artificial nose scaffold and a breast augmentation on Nadia. Isolated in the compound, Maggie secretly relies on a forbidden piece of technology, a highly advanced AI griefbot of her late husband, Marc. Created by her genius sister, the app flawlessly mimics Marc's personality, allowing Maggie to speak to him in her darkest moments. When Brovsky catches her using the phone, he confiscates it, deeply suspicious of her communications. The next morning, Maggie steps into the meticulously recreated operating room and finds her sanctuary. She flawlessly executes Oleg's complex facial reconstruction. Hours later, she operates on Nadia. But as the surgical team removes the grounding pads from Nadia's leg post-surgery, Maggie freezes. Etched into her upper thigh is a garish, cartoonish orange and purple serpent and saint tattoo. It is the exact, one-of-a-kind custom tattoo Marc drunkenly got during a college spring break in New Orleans. Before Maggie can process this impossible coincidence, chaos erupts. Oleg vanishes from his recovery room. Brovsky returns Maggie's phone and orders her to get on a helicopter to leave immediately. But the AI griefbot suddenly warns Maggie that the helicopter is a trap. Brovsky's men plan to drop her into a bottomless mine shaft because she altered the oligarch's face. Trusting the warning, Maggie triggers a distraction and escapes through a window. She slides down an icy roof, dodging bullets from a massive, lifeless-eyed guard named Cinderblock. Breaking into Oleg's automotive showroom, Maggie steals a vintage manual Ferrari, crashing through the compound gates. With her tires shot out, she plunges into a steep, snowy ravine and loses consciousness. Maggie wakes up in a luxurious high-rise in Dubai, rescued by Charles Lockwood, a manicured, handsome man with a boyish prep school vibe who claims to be a covert intelligence operative. Charles drops a bombshell. Oleg's charity, the Castleton Foundation, was the primary donor to World Cures, the humanitarian organization Maggie, Marc, and Trace founded. Oleg used their charity to launder money and harvest black market organs. Charles believes Marc discovered the truth and became an informant, which led to his assassination. Furthermore, Charles reveals that Trace is not in Bangladesh. He is entirely off the grid. Charles sends Maggie to an ultra-exclusive, neon-drenched nightclub called Etoy Ladona to find Nadia, who frequently haunts the Dubai nightlife. In the pulsating, strobe-lit VIP room, Maggie corners the young woman. Nadia professes her true identity. She is Salima, the local guide who led Marc and Trace to the Tri-Point refugee camp the day Marc died.
Years ago, living in extreme poverty, Nadia sold her kidney to Oleg's organ ring to save her family. Trace was the surgeon who harvested her kidney, and he gave her the serpent and saint tattoo while she was unconscious as a twisted signature. Nadia reveals she is madly in love with Trace, showing Maggie her engagement ring. She accuses Maggie of having Marc murder Trace to cover up the charity's corruption, but their tense confrontation is interrupted when Maggie spots a terrified Oleg Gragorovich on the dance floor. As Maggie reaches him through the mosh pit, a massive assassin plunges a blade into Oleg's chest. Maggie fights brutally to save him, nearly choking out the guard Cinderblock, but she is beaten down by the crowd. Realizing they are both pawns, Maggie and Nadia form a shaky alliance. The next morning, they infiltrate Steve Shipner's clinic, Apollo Longevity, the former Dubai headquarters for World Cures. Steve reveals that 5 months ago, Trace broke into the facility and stole the Thumper A7, a revolutionary artificial heart they had developed. When Dubai security corners them, Maggie incapacitates a guard with a brutal throat strike, and Nadia fakes a hostage situation, allowing them to escape the building. Nadia helps Maggie secure a fake passport, and Maggie flees to London. On the flight, Maggie pieces the puzzle together. She unearths an old military photograph of Oleg Gragorovich and realizes the horrifying truth. The man she operated on in Russia and the man who was murdered on the Dubai dance floor was not Oleg. It was a body double, a decoy. The facial reconstruction surgery she performed was designed to make the decoy look more like the real oligarch, fattening him up for the kill so the real Oleg could fake his death. Landing at Heathrow, Maggie is overjoyed to find Porkchop waiting for her. She explains her theory. Trace stole the artificial heart technology and fled to a secret underground medical bunker located beneath a vineyard in Brookhoe, France. Traveling to the Chateau Hobo, France, Maggie approaches the heavily guarded perimeter and stares directly into a security camera. Minutes later, Brodsky emerges and escorts her into a massive, state-of-the-art subterranean laboratory. Inside, the real Oleg Gragorovich sits hooked up to oxygen, dying of heart failure. With his native heart finally giving out, Oleg needs the ultimate surgery, a beating heart transplant combined with the robotic Thumper A7 artificial heart. Because Maggie is the only surviving creator of the technology capable of performing the surgery, Oleg orchestrated her entire journey. He delivers a chilling ultimatum. If Maggie refuses to perform the transplant, his men will rip Porkchop's heart out of his chest with anesthesia while she watches. Trapped, Maggie scrubs in. Working alongside a heavily disguised, gruff-voiced assisting surgeon, Maggie executes the impossibly complex procedure. She removes Oleg's deceased heart, implants the Thumper A7, and integrates the donor organ. After moments of agonizing silence, the artificial heart begins to beat. The room erupts in quiet celebration. But as Maggie looks up to lock eyes with her assisting surgeon, she realizes the horrifying truth beneath her surgical mask. It is Trace Packer. Maggie tears out of the operating room and chases Trace to the surface, but he escapes in a vehicle before she can reach him. Exhausted and reeling, Maggie reunites with Porkchop outside the compound. They return to their guest house only to find a furious Nadia waiting for them with a lone gun. Nadia has checked the phone records and realized that Maggie called Trace to come to the United States right before he vanished. With Nadia holding Maggie at gunpoint, demanding to know what she did to the man she loves, Porkchop steps out of the shadows with his own weapon drawn. He confesses the ultimate devastating truth. Maggie didn't kill Trace, Porkchop did. Porkchop reveals that Trace was the mastermind behind Marc's murder. When Marc discovered Trace's black market organ harvesting, Trace arranged the militant attack to silence his best friend. Months later, when Maggie called Trace with suspicions, Trace packed a gun and lethal sedatives, flying to America to murder Maggie and stage it as a suicide. Porkchop intercepted Trace at Dulles Airport, interrogated him, and executed him to protect his daughter-in-law. Porkchop then made a deal with Oleg Gragorovich. He offered to deliver the stolen Thumper A7 technology and manipulate Maggie into performing the surgery, all in exchange for their absolute freedom and safety. But Porkchop had a final brutal twist of his own. He confesses to Maggie and Nadia that the donor on the operating table was not some anonymous brain-dead patient. Over the past several hours, Porkchop had slowly and methodically harvested Oleg Gragovich's corneas, kidneys, lungs, and livers, all without anesthesia, as an agonizing, torturous revenge for the murder of his son. The beating heart Maggie just implanted belonged to the very man who orchestrated the nightmare. Stunned by the sheer gravity of Porkchop's vengeance, Nadia lowers her weapon. Porkchop spares her life, telling her to disappear. As the sun sets over the French vineyard, painting the sky in bruised hues of purple and orange, Maggie and Porkchop stand together in the silence of their shared bloody absolution. Weeks later, safe in Baltimore, Maggie stands on her porch in the crisp evening air. A neighbor's radio plays a melancholic ballad about letting go. She opens her phone, looks at the digital face of the griefbot one last time, and permanently deletes the application. Accepting her grief at last, she travels to the biker bar to sit quietly beside Porkchop, holding on to the only family she has left, as the phantom rhythm of an artificial heartbeat echoes softly in her mind.